So, hello there, YouTube. This is being recorded during my normal stream, so if there's anything that goes on in the background, any alerts or me discussing anything with chat, any form of distractions like that that happen in the next 2 minutes, I apologize. But I just thought while I was already live is probably the best time and place to do this. So, now that Wizards of the Coast has made an official statement regarding what their intentions are for the OGL, such as their statement was, I'm going to make mine. I did not want to make my statement until they officially said anything because I don't like responding to speculation or supposition. Even though it was no longer seeming necessary, I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt before I addressed anything. So for those who don't know me, I am W. Adam Clark, second class elitist. I have been a gamer since 1984. I have owned every copy, every edition of Dungeons and Dragons that has ever existed. I have owned and played and run 100 RPGs that weren't TSR related. I have written for several companies in the tabletop wargaming and tabletop RPG space. I am also a published author. In my inbox, I have a draft of a contract that I was sent in 2015. I've kept it for over 7 years because it was the most insane, most anti-freelancer contract I'd ever received as a writer. It suggests that during the period I worked for an outlet which will remain nameless, because I was writing for their magazine as a staffer, they had the rights to 20% of the revenue I generated in any other freelancing or published work, and all creations during that period were immediately their intellectual property. Needless to say, I didn't sign that contract. Look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a role model. If you listen to my critics, I'm not even a terribly talented writer or game master. I'm not about to tell you what everyone should do or what the right answer is. I'm just going to explain my answer and the answer that feels right for me. I've had a copy of the 1.1 for over a week, longer than some, far less than others. If you haven't read it, I suggest getting cliff notes from someone else just so you can be aware. But don't actually read it unless you feel a need, because it's a hard read. The OGL 1.1 was a bad document. If you had 100% faith that Hasbro Wizards of the Coast would never abuse it, and had a crystal ball to suggest that no one on their boards and no later owners when Wayland Yutani eventually buys them would ever act on the broad powers contained within that document, it's still a coin toss whether it's to your benefit or not. There are parts that I do not agree with, and concepts that I also support. I believe creators' rights needs to be a two-way street. Remember that, I'll come back around to it. Legally, Wizards of the Coast is the current creator, air quotes, of D&D. As the people making the game are in their employ, same as great filmmakers and actors are working for Disney, Marvel, or Warner Brothers DC, depending on which camp you're in. And those companies are the creators of those works as well. I have no issue with any creator, absolutely any creator, taking steps to secure the intellectual property that they own or have created. To be fair, tabletop gaming is one of the few remaining open licenses. I can't make a comic book about my own character in Gotham or Metropolis without DC taking far more than 25%. Nor can I make my own X-Men, Avenger, or Star Wars content without paying royalties beforehand. However, traditionally, those royalties are in line either with expected income or outlined per contract for individual property and project, not set with blanked values across the board. More importantly, in a shared IP contract where I'm giving access to my creations to a third party in response for having access to theirs, a certain amount of royalty back for used property, even if it's 0.5% or less, is kind of customary. As I said, creators' rights has to be a two-way street. The real issue was the automatic granting of rights to your creations to Wizards of the Coast in perpetuity. Even worse, that Wizards of the Coast could cancel your access to D&D creation, yet still retain the rights and access to the world you created. Much of this document felt predatory. It made me nauseous to read. And that's not hyperbolic. To me, this document read the way an abusing relationship feels. And that's not a Trail of Tears argument. This is a person who has previously been abused telling you reading this document felt like that abuse. The idea that Wizards of the Coast could make Critical Role the movie or Drakkenheim the animated series without the consent or recognition of Matt Mercer or Dr. Martin, respectively, was a dramatic step backward in creators' rights that has been being waged in the court for the last 50 years. I don't want to go back to a world where minds like Jack Kirby, Bob Kane, Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster, Harper Lee, J.D. Salinger, Graham Jules, Jennifer Pedrosa, Margaret Weiss, Tracy Hickman, David Cox, Carolyn Socht, and countless others are again forced into decades-long court battles to receive credit for their creations, sometimes even posthumously. This time, those battles would wind up being even harder to fight because, quote, you signed a contract. The reported changes to the new and improved OGL 1.2 or 2.0 or 3-point parakeet or whatever they want to call it is irrelevant to me. Even though they haven't told us what they are, it's completely irrelevant. Wizards has previously, as well as in their update, commented on the strength of the brand being their business partners. The problem is, partners do not treat each other with such disregard. Partners understand the needs and expectations of those they do business with. The 1.1 in no way treated creators as partners. The 1.1 treated creators as assets. I can't tell you what OGL 1.2 or 2.0 or Apple.Elmtree is going to contain. All I can tell you is I don't think it matters. Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast have demonstrated an absolute disconnect from the needs of their community, from the needs of their content creators, from the needs of even many of their own staff, and the needs of their most distinguished business partners. The simple fact that they would take months to draft a document that is so abhorribly tone deaf and expect absolutely no reprisal means that even regardless of a Weyland-Yutani situation, you simply cannot have faith that this corporate entity is interested or even aware of your best interests. And that means that this is a no faith situation. It means that there's no way to prove it won't reoccur at some future date when they think they can get away with it again. I don't blame anybody who plays, anybody who sticks with 5e, 1D and D. I don't blame anybody who stays from a creator or player perspective. I'm just saying, as a creator, creators' rights is a hill that I'm willing to die on. I don't trust Wizards of the Coast. No matter what OGL comes out, I am not signing that contract. And now, thanks to 1.1, I have a new gold standard in my inbox for bad contracts. Thank you. Good night.